And in the last 24 hours of the F1 news cycle, Mohammed Ben Sulayem has done it again. Can this dude not keep his foot out of his mouth? And you know, if this were isolated incidents, it wouldn't be so bad, a one-off per se. But only this weekend, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, the head of the FIA, was posting a picture with himself, Prince Andrew and Max Mosley with a view to highlight, to commemorate 20 years of the Bahrain Grand Prix. Insensitive, any? Not to mention his strong arming of F1 and the commercial rights holder, encouraging, no, imploring them to take on Andretti as a new team. And as you'd expect, when his strong-arm tactics were met with resentment, he accused the teams of being greedy, no, selfish. Way to win hearts and minds out here. Lest we forget the time when Mohammed Ben Sulayem told Christian Horner that he is the only friend he's got. Friend? That doesn't smack necessarily of the impartiality that you would associate with the regulatory body and the head of. And then most recently, of course, we've got MBS advising 3-time champion Max Verstappen what sort of unqualified supporting statement he needs to release over humanity. And Max's response today is very damning for all parties concerned, because Max has said, whilst my father might be very outspoken, one thing that he's not is a liar. Oof. MBS, how about you put that in your pipe and smoke it? Oh, and MBS has only gone and done it again, most recently infringing on FIA's corporate policy, spending too much on travel, private jets and such. That, of course, against the backdrop of an F1 that's driving desperately towards sustainability, making best efforts towards becoming net zero. Oh, and it gets worse, because Andrew Benson of the BBC cites as Mohammed bin Sulayem's most recent indiscretion overtyping stewards and race directorship. That is criminal. For of course there should be Chinese walls between the head of the FIA and the decision makers on the ground, lest we want corruption and such like to just run amok, untethered, unchecked. Because see, Mohammed bin Sulayem has been accused of getting involved where his nose should not be, overturning Fernando Alonso's 10-second penalty at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix last year. And worse still, by coercion and other means, this fella wanted race inspectors to go out and declare the Las Vegas Grand Prix circuit unfit for racing, even though it was nothing of the sort. But why would he even do such a thing? What's the matter with him? Well, here's the salient point. There's been friction for the longest time between the FIA and F1, the commercial rights holder. While some in the paddock say that Aramco, an Aston Martin sponsor, might have had something to do with MBS's keen to dismiss Alonso's penalty. And regarding the Las Vegas incident, there is one whistleblower. There were many people in the room, all of whom, except for the whistleblower, remember things a bit differently. If it looks and smells like a setup, then maybe it is one. That much notwithstanding, the FIA has released a statement saying that the FIA's compliance officer has received a report detailing complaints about one of the members of its governing body. The compliance department, the FIA continues, is assessing these concerns as is common practice in these matters to ensure that due process is meticulously followed. But lest we forget that the FIA's remit is bigger than just F1. And it's with that in mind that Mohammed Ben Sulayem was elected in the first place, because it was deemed that he wouldn't bend the knee to F1 like his predecessor Jean Todt did. Ben Sulayem is keen for F1 to respect not only him, but the FIA too. And in and amongst all this rumour mill, it's easy to forget that we have ourselves a Saudi Arabian GP this Saturday, where one Eric van Horen has been sighted in the Red Bull hospitality pen. Yeah, that's right, the Dutch journo who was first to break the story about Christian Horner is telling that he's around, no indicative of the fact there's still ongoing fissures and fractions at Red Bull. This only days after peace talks between Christian Horner and Max Verstappen's manager were said to have taken place in Dubai. The Independent writes that they went swimmingly, that progress between the two factions has been made. And in all this, there are two timelines worth noting. First, the accuser has 5 working days to appeal the decision of the independent Red Bull investigation. This Wednesday, the 6th of the 3rd, 2024, is the 5th of 5. But that's not stopped the rumour mill around Max Verstappen potentially joining Mercedes, replacing one Sir Lewis Hamilton. And Toto Wolff, of course, took the time to chime in, saying the drivers' market is very interesting. For a driver, it's important to be with whoever's fastest. And there's no reason for Max then to leave Red Bull anytime soon. But, continues Toto, we'll see what happens. Allow me to reiterate for the avoidance of doubt, Toto Wolff will drop kick George Russell and Kimi Antonelli if it meant getting a sniff of Max Verstappen. Because, I don't think he's ever forgiven himself for missing out on Max in the first place. And George Russell, first of his name, expounded upon his team principal's sentiments today at the drivers' press conference. When he was asked by Sky Sports F1's David Croft, what are the chances of Max joining you at Mercedes? And George's response might shock you. He said that you need the best drivers in F1, and right about now, Max is the best. So if you have the opportunity to sign the best, then you sign him. The best in F1, who? Max Verstappen over Lewis Hamilton. As if there wasn't enough acrimony already at the team from Brackley and Brixworth, Lewis Hamilton evangelists will be losing their minds. Crofty continued, how would you feel if Max Verstappen, the man who had some choice words to say about you last year, joined Mercedes next year? George responded in bullish manner, saying Lewis isn't a bad benchmark and I've done all right against him, haven't I? Ergo, I believe that I can beat anyone. Oof. Also at the drivers' press conference, Messrs Russell and Leclerc were quick to dismiss rumour and speculation around the track infringement penalty being raised from 5 seconds to 10. Leclerc being quick to remind us that the drivers sit so low in the car that they can barely see the white line that dictates track limits, let alone adhere to it. 10 seconds then, probably a bit too harsh. Bottas and Lance Stroll were asked to chime in around all the off-track shenanigans, Horner allegations et al. Lance responded intelligently with a 200-level IQ value-add response. The Canadian said, I just like driving cars. At the same press conference, Yuki Tsunoda was asked to post-mortem the Bahrain Grand Prix. Asked what drove his bad attitude, he said we were just on different strategies, but we're singing from the same hymn sheet now. The Japanese driver continued, if team orders were to take place this weekend, there'd be no such problem. We hope. And in other news, Alpine is still Alpining. At this point, I'm surprised they've got any workforce left. And that's because the latest departure is championship winning engineer Bob Bell, who had existed in an advisory role for the Enstone team. And this is the latest in a long line of key personnel departures. Lest we forget, earlier this week, technical director Matt Harmon and head of aero Dirk de Beer also left. With Ocon and Gasly qualifying 19th and 20th at the Bahrain Grand Prix, finishing 17 and 18. To say that the Enstone team is in just a bit of a pickle, it's an understatement. And journalist power rankings are out for the Bahrain Grand Prix, with Max Verstappen topping the tables with a 9.6 out of 10. Carlos Sainz following in second with an 8.6. And F1 fans around the world having voted Carlos Sainz Jr. their driver of the day, they might feel hard done by. And in other news, F1 want to use the Red Bull drone, the one that goes 220 miles an hour, and beat a Red Bull F1 car around the Silverstone track. F1 are keen to use this to take shots on their broadcast. And so long as the safety of the drivers and the fans in attendance is looked after, that's a brilliant idea. Ferrari, Aston Martin and VCARB are all expected to bring their first updates of the year to the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix this weekend. And Toto said that Mercedes didn't get to show their true hand as far as their performance, that cooling issues meant they needed to lift and coast, that they expect better this weekend. And whilst many aficionados are predicting the obvious this weekend, another dominant Max Verstappen victory, it's worth remembering that at the Saudi Grand Prix in 2022 and 23, his teammate Checo Perez has put it on pole. And footage of the latest track in Saudi Arabia has been released, and it's epic. 21 corners, 108 metres in elevation. Oh. But this only 24 hours after an article in The Guardian had taken aim at F1's questionable morality as it continues its relentless foray into petro states with a very dubious human rights record.